If you hold your breath and press your ear to the cold water, the sea does the same. It holds its breath in reply, and in that pause, you can hear not the wind, but a heartbeat. That May, the northern coast smelled of salt and iron. The ice had already retreated from the shore, but clung to the bay in gray slabs, like an old memory unwilling to melt. The water was calm, and in that calmness lurked danger the kind found in a sleeping beast pretending to rest. At dawn, few fishing boats left the harbor. The old men simply watched the horizon, where the sky grew heavier, the sea darker, and shook their heads in silence. The name was spoken rarely, in a whisper, as if it could raise a wave by itself. Leviathan. Not the Leviathan from books and sermons, their northern one, slow, sleek as a current, ancient as the darkness beneath the shelf. He was not thought of as a monster. Monsters destroy, but Leviathan, if those who claimed to have seen him could be believed, did not. He moved between fishing nets and left them intact, as though the sea, through him, was careful not to ruin human labor. But wherever he passed, the depths changed. Shallows deepened, trenches opened, as if someone below was redrawing the map of the seabed. The first sign that year was silence. The old lighthouse, with its copper mirror, was used to trembling during storms. Now it vibrated under a windless sky. The station technician logged it as low-frequency vibration under non-weather conditions, dated May 11. The graph showed a steady row of waves, 9 pulses, 27 seconds apart. Neither ships nor whales sang like that, too regular, too deep. In the archives of the Coastal Oceanography Institute, they found a parallel. A reel-to-reel recording from 1974 bore the same pattern. The signal had been detected by 3 stations hundreds of kilometers apart, as if it traveled along the thermocline, that natural sound channel where water amplifies distant voices. The report read dryly, "Origin indeterminate, possible tectonic activity." But in the margin, in the hand of engineer Pospelov, was written, "Source displacement 18 kilometers in 11 minutes. If it's a rock, it's moving. Much has been explained since then. Scientists discovered methane flares, salt stalactites known as brinicles, and jellyfish glowing as if tiny lighthouses lived on the seafloor. But some coincidences refused to fit into data. Infrared satellite images showed a blurry thermal streak under thinning ice curved, too smooth for a crack. Timing matched perfectly. Evening the streak, night the disappearance of herring schools. Morning fish washed ashore with burns along their scales, as if touched by an invisible flame. Scientists argued about eddy currents, piezoelectric salt reactions, under ice lightning. The fisherman only shrugged. He passed, quietly passed. Those days brought an unnatural clarity to the coast. The air turned sharp, ringing, and though the horizon seemed closer, it never came nearer. At dawn, a young technician from the research vessel launched a drone beneath the ice, the lab's new toy, 4K camera, side sonar, acoustic modem. The drone had reached nearly 300 meters when the sonar painted something strange. Not rock, not ice, not a school of fish. Something whole, with repeating arcs like ribs, too regular, too long. On the monitor, it looked like a corridor made of curves. The technician barely managed to zoom in before the signal cut out. Just before it died, a low hum came through. Not sound, but pressure felt in the chest. That same day, coastal seismometers registered brief tremors, not earthquakes, but not trawler noise either, as if something enormous slowly changing course brushed the seafloor. The logs added a new term, subglacial shift of unknown nature, words that explained nothing but calmed the paperwork. The sea itself was silent, smooth as glass, save for the occasional flash of phosphorescence, round and fading, as if light was being exhaled from the deep. The old men who remembered 1974 and even quieter years said Leviathan was not a hunter, he was movement itself. He needed depth and current. His path lay between salt and fresh, between cold and colder. He turns the sea like a fish turns its gills, one said, waving a hand lazily in the air to trace the motion. They explained the burns on the fish simply. Where he passes, the water changes, sweet turns salty, salty turns clear. That's what stings. Naive words and strangely comforting. Science offered its own fragments. The recordings revealed harmonics at 14, 28, and 56 Hz multiples of a single process. If the source was not metal, not a propeller, not electricity, what remained was biology. Whales sing differently, more complex, higher pitched. But imagine an organism using sound not to communicate, but to navigate a deep-sea sonar creature seeing by resonance across dozens of kilometers. Add the thermal trace, a massive body, warmer than its surroundings by fractions of a degree, yet enough for an infrared lens to detect a slow, serpentine signature beneath the ice. And bioluminescence, not decoration, but a byproduct of colossal metabolism, billions of bacteria on skin or mucus flashing in reaction to motion. Put it all together, it was not a legend, but a model. Not a monster, but a creature of depth, as old as the ice cycles, as skillful as the sea itself. It moved rarely, by rules no one knew, and every passage changed the coast. A cliff collapsed, a new channel opened. Fish vanished for years and returned suddenly, as though someone had untangled an ancient net. On the night of May 12th, the sky was dry and bare. By the pier, a boy apprenticed to the fishermen kept watch mostly for show. He didn't believe in the tales until he saw 3 long waves rolling toward the shore from the horizon, though the air was still. They came softly, as if something huge exhaled beneath the ice. Far out, the ice lifted, groaned, and then the water in the harbor began to glow. Not bright, but as if a match had been struck inside the sea. The light pulsed smoothly, breath-like, and for a moment a curved ridge appeared beneath the surface aback, then darkness again. The next day, the boy said nothing. He only took a nail and carved a word of 8 letters into the mast and drew a short line above it, like a spine. The newspapers wrote about a rare combination of natural factors. Biologists called for a commission. The military kept silent. The sea returned to routine rocking weeds, polishing stones, pushing up children's toys, and fragments of plastic crates. But deep below, a rhythm remained 9 beats, 27 seconds apart. Instruments heard it. Those born near the shore felt it in their skin as they fell asleep to the surf. And everyone who heard it sensed not menace, but order, as if something vast, slow, and not cruel was checking whether all boundaries still held, whether all cracks were sealed with ice, whether every current was still in its place. It proved nothing, but neither did it disprove. The sea rarely leaves signatures yet, sometimes. On those ringing, breathless days when silence grows denser than water, it writes its first letters across the surface. Then, from the shore, you can see it. Beneath the mirror passes not myth, but life. A long shadow glides under the ice, and for a heartbeat, it feels as though it might touch the stone cape like a cat brushing against its master's hand. Thus was born a new kind of hope, that Leviathan is not a myth, but a possibility, proof that something still exists in this world so vast it needs no roar, no witness, no faith. It simply is. And because of that, the sea once again feels like the sea and humankind, for a moment, like a guest who finally remembers to wipe his boots before entering. Even those who had lived by it all their lives, who knew every breath of its tide, felt it. Fishermen said the water had become heavier. Not thicker, heavier in presence, as if when one looked into it, something stared back. After the spring thaw, the bay no longer shone green or gray. It turned black, faintly luminous from within, like stormlight trapped beneath glass. When the scientific vessel arrived in June, its mission was clear: to confirm or disprove the existence of a large biological mass long dismissed as legend. The archives were filled with traces, acoustic records, satellite photos, thermal distortions. All pointed to one conclusion: beneath the ice lived something vast, weighing perhaps 20,000 tons, capable of movement and producing rhythmic, low-frequency pulses. Officially, it didn't exist. Among scientists, it had a name anyway: Leviathan. The first anomaly appeared in sonar. The seafloor vanished. Instruments that normally traced ridges and valleys showed only a blank, featureless void, a gap that absorbed every sound wave. It didn't happen randomly. The disappearance always occurred at precise pressure and temperature points, as if someone below opened a valve in the ocean itself. After each event, the water temperature in the bay rose by fractions of a degree, and bubbles appeared on the surface, not methane, not gas, but slow, measured breaths, always 9. Then 27 seconds of silence. The air changed with them. It thickened, carrying a metallic tang like rust or blood. Birds vanished. Then came the sound, a deep vibration, not heard but felt, shaking window panes even in the towns along the coast. The wind died, yet waves moved inward, drawn by something breathing from below. At night, light seeped through the ice. It wasn't reflected from the moon, it came from underneath, faint and rhythmic, like the pulse of a bioluminescent heart. Photographs showed a long, curved glow resembling the back of a colossal creature. Scientists claimed it was plankton reacting to temperature shifts, but none could explain the order, the perfect timing between flashes. A drone sent beneath the ice recorded its last images in silence. At first, only green-black water and silt, then movement, a slow, immense shifting, as though the sea itself turned in its sleep. Patterns emerged, shimmering like veins under translucent skin. Then the feed went dead. 1 minute later, the signal reappeared 5 kilometers away. The drone could not have traveled that far. Pressure and ice would have crushed it. The only plausible explanation: it was moved, pushed aside, expelled by something alive. By dawn, the water had turned metallic. Circular ice rings formed around the vessel, smooth, flawless, perfectly symmetrical. They didn't rotate or melt. They pulsed gently, as if breathing. In the center of one, a flicker appeared, a single, enormous eye breaking the surface for less than a second. Thermal scanners spiked by 2 degrees exactly where it had been. Then nothing. Hours later, pressure sensors picked up a surge, not a wave, not a quake, but a breath. Seismographs showed a displacement 30 kilometers wide. At its center, an acoustic shadow formed a field where sound ceased to exist. Voices were swallowed by it. Even machinery went quiet, as if reality itself held its breath. Vessels entering the area lost navigation. Compasses spun. Magnetometers showed anomalies. Fish disappeared. But stranger still was the behavior of the water. It stopped reflecting light. Beams from submersible lamps dissolved midstream, leaving the cameras blind. Only a gray blur remained until a single dot appeared, growing closer. When it filled the frame, the lens froze with frost underwater. The footage was never shown publicly. Too unbelievable, but those who watched it never forgot. One technician wrote in the log, "We are observing an organism that doesn't hide. It's simply too large to be seen all at once." By August, the bay near Cape Surya was closed off. The ice trembled as though a massive heart beat beneath it. Satellites recorded subtle shifts in the shoreline as if something vast rolled under the crust. In orbital photographs, faint arcs appeared, kilometers long, shaped like fin traces. And near the coast, snow depressions elongated, not circular, as if something enormous had brushed the surface from below. Official reports blamed subglacial gas or optical mirage, but the classified summary sent to Moscow read differently. Probability of a large biological entity, estimated mass 20–40,000 tons, conditionally confirmed. Nature of the object undetermined. Behavioral pattern cyclical. Locals revived the old tales. They said Leviathan was not a monster, but the memory of the sea itself, a living current that stirs when the boundary between the living and the drowned grows thin. They said its back was armored with salt and stone, and its eyes burned cold like submerged stars. Its breath raised tides, its body chilled the ocean around it. When it passed, fog followed heavy, lightless, and the world went silent. Only the rhythm remained, 9 beats, 27 seconds of pause, and 9 again. Those pulses, the elders said, were the heartbeat of the world. Humanity simply hadn't listened to before. Now, it was awake. And those who heard the sound once never forgot it, because it wasn't a warning, it was remembrance. Leviathan, they said, is not a beast. It is the ocean's nerve, its memory, and its fear. And when it stirs, it means the sea has remembered what mankind truly is, a brief noise upon its surface. The ocean had stopped pretending to be silent. For 2 weeks, the vessel Polar 7 drifted above the same coordinates. Every instrument on board sonar, seismograph, magnetic sensors recorded the same pattern. 9 low-frequency pulses, 27 seconds apart. They came from deep below the ice shelf, rising through the thermocline like the heartbeat of a buried world. Each day the sound grew slightly stronger. Each night the ice groaned as if it were breathing. The scientists stopped calling it an anomaly. They called it the signal. It was no longer just an acoustic phenomenon. The water temperature oscillated in sync with the pulses, electrical systems flickered in rhythm, and even human bodies began to respond, heart rates drifting toward the same frequency range. Sleep cycles breaking into intervals that matched the signal's periodicity. The data looked impossible, but the recordings were consistent. By the 7th day, the lead researcher, Dr. Elena Korneva, had compiled enough data to publish 3 papers if she ever made it home. She read through them in the dim red light of the control room, while the ship trembled slightly under the weight of unseen tides. On the monitor, the waveform of the signal scrolled endlessly, a living line etched in pale blue across the screen. At 3:42 UTC, the sound changed. For the first time since it began, the 9th pulse did not fade. It stretched long, sustained, rising in frequency until it became a trembling hum that no instrument could categorize. The seismograph needle began to move on its own, tracing a slow spiral. The computers froze, the power dimmed, and then, under the deck, came a deep thud, as if the hull had been struck by an enormous, deliberate hand. The impact was minor, barely enough to register as motion, but the shock was psychological. Every member of the crew felt it. They gathered in silence on deck, wrapped in thermal suits, their breath steaming into the polar night. The ice field around them glowed faintly from beneath, a soft light pulsing through cracks in long, deliberate intervals. No one spoke. The signal had stopped, but the ocean was still resonating with its echo. When morning came, Elena examined the sonar data. What she found was not an error. The entire seafloor under the ship had shifted downward by 20 meters overnight, creating a perfectly symmetrical depression roughly 2 kilometers wide. The contours resembled a crater, except that it wasn't circular. It was shaped like a vertebra. At 11 hours, the second drone, Murena 4, was launched through a drilled shaft in the ice. It descended smoothly at first, sending back crisp video of the under-ice environment. At 480 meters, the water became cloudy with particulate matter, and the temperature dropped sharply. Then came the flickering light blue, diffuse, like lightning seen through fog. And movement. Something massive passed in front of the drone. Not fast, not aggressive, just enormous. For 3 full seconds, its surface filled the entire frame. The camera caught a texture, smooth, almost metallic, patterned with faint hexagonal ridges. Then a single aperture opened, contracting like a pupil. Light reflected off at once, like the flash of a mirror in darkness. The feed dissolved into static. The drone never returned. The cable came back half melted, as though exposed to chemical heat. That afternoon, the magnetic field around Polar 7 fluctuated wildly. Compasses spun. The digital clocks began to drift, each losing time at slightly different rates. Radio contact with the coastal base broke down into bursts of static. Yet amid the interference, one phrase repeated faintly, hidden within the noise. Depth confirmed. No one had transmitted it. The engineers opened the hydrophone logs, searching for human interference. But what they found was worse. The phrase wasn't human speech. It was constructed from fragments of the signal itself, rearranged into a crude imitation of words. The ocean had begun to speak back. By nightfall, the fog rolled in, thicker than ever. Visibility dropped to less than 10 meters. Through it, faint points of light drifted bioluminescent clusters moving in geometric patterns. They formed circles around the ship, expanding slowly outward as if mapping the hull. Every few minutes, a tremor ran through the ice, shaking loose crystals that fell like glass rain. At 23:09, the ice broke. Not shattered, opened. A crack extended from bow to horizon, straight as a ruler, glowing faintly along its edges. Warm mist rose from the water below. Instruments screamed as pressure spiked. Then the sea beneath the ship began to move, not in waves, but in a single, immense motion, like the flex of a lung. For several minutes, nothing else happened. Then, from below, a column of bubbles surged upward, expanding violently as they hit the surface. The ship tilted 5 degrees. Beneath the ice hole, sonar detected an object rising slowly. Its size exceeded the scanner's range. Its velocity was steady, calculated, deliberate. When it reached 200 meters below the surface, the temperature rose 3 degrees. At 150, electrical systems shorted. At 100, the hull began to vibrate. And then nothing. The object stopped. The crew waited, frozen in silence, staring at the water. Underneath the thin layer of fog, something vast hovered, unseen. The ocean's surface bulged slightly, as if from the weight of a submerged island. Within the glow of their floodlights, faint filaments of light moved beneath the ice like veins tracing the outline of a shape too big to comprehend. A slow, undulating pulse rippled through them. When the final power outage struck, the emergency lights flickered once, casting the deck in a dull red glow. The sea beneath turned black again, erasing the veins of light, leaving only stillness. For a long time, no one breathed. Then the sound returned not as 9 pulses, but as one continuous vibration. It was no longer a signal, it was awareness. The next morning, the seafloor had risen back to its original height, as if nothing had happened. But every file, every log, every timestamp recorded during the night was corrupted, erased in the same repeating pattern. 9 blank seconds, 27 seconds of static. The Polar 7 turned for home that day. None of the crew ever spoke publicly again. Months later, when the autumn storms cleared, a satellite passed over the same coordinates. It captured a single frame before cloud cover returned. Beneath the ice, a luminous shape hundreds of meters long, curved like a spine, moving toward the continental shelf. The image was classified, sealed in an archive labeled only with 2 words. Deep signal. Months passed. The sea froze over again, sealing everything beneath a perfect mirror of ice. To anyone looking from above, the bay appeared normal, calm, unbroken, its surface as smooth as glass. Yet those who had lived by it all their lives said it felt different now. The water was quieter, too quiet, as though it had learned something and was waiting. The Polar 7 never returned to those coordinates. Officially, the expedition was concluded due to instrument failure and seasonal instability. The logs, data, and recordings were confiscated by the Northern Research Division and filed under restricted access. The crew members were reassigned, their reports redacted, their personal statements replaced with standardized summaries. In the months that followed, rumors spread through the scientific community, unconfirmed, unverifiable, unstoppable, that the ocean floor beneath the bay had changed shape overnight, that new magnetic lines had appeared on global charts, faint but real, that something large enough to distort tides had moved south toward the open sea. None of it made the journals. All of it was whispered. Satellite imagery provided no answers. Some scans showed strange thermal curves beneath the ice. Others, nothing at all. When compared over time, the shapes never stayed the same. It was as if the sea itself edited its own reflection, and in that erasure, the legend of Leviathan grew stronger, not weaker. By December, the Arctic daylight had dwindled to an hour of cold amber. The wind carved fractures through the frozen surface, exposing veins of dark water below. On certain nights, fishermen claimed to hear a low hum traveling through the ice, not the wind, not machinery, but a pulse too regular to be coincidence. 9 beats, pause, then silence. The Institute for Oceanic Research denied all connection. Acoustic illusions, they said. Thermal stress in the ice layers. The public accepted it. Most people prefer explanations that fit inside words. But the ocean does not speak in words. It remembers in vibrations. In early January, a Norwegian icebreaker crossing the same latitude reported a brief seismic tremor beneath its hull. No damage, no aftershock. Just a sound low, rhythmic, precisely 27 seconds apart. The captain logged it, shrugged, and sailed on. Later that week, the recording disappeared from the digital archive. In a classified debrief, Dr. Elena Korneva was asked the same question 3 times. Did you see it? Her answer never changed. No. But the way she said it suggested something different, that not seeing was the point, that what lay beneath was not meant to be observed in the way humans understood observation. The data remained. Fragments of corrupted sonar, partial audio of the signal, inconsistent readings of gravity that couldn't be reconciled with existing maps. Analysts tried to rebuild the pattern, to decode the rhythm as if it were language. Some claimed it formed mathematical ratios, something close to intention. Others dismissed it as interference. None could reproduce it. None could erase it completely. In spring, when the ice began to thin, a small research drone from a later expedition captured a few seconds of footage before its systems froze. It showed only this, the underside of the ice glowing faintly, as though the sea were illuminated from below by a slow, wandering light. The surface rippled once, softly, and the recording ended. Temperature sensors showed no anomaly. The explanation in the report read, "Optical reflection from lunar light beneath variable ice strata." But the moon that night was new. The Arctic returned to its rhythm. Ships passed, storms rose and fell, and the ocean carried on with the patience of an old god. Yet the coordinates of the Polar Seven became a superstition avoided by sailors, bypassed by surveyors, unmarked on new maps. Even satellites, by coincidence or design, failed to capture that sector in subsequent orbits. Years later, when fragments of the expedition's data were quietly declassified, scientists noticed a small, consistent detail hidden in the metadata of every file, a timestamp irregularity. Every recording, every document, every still image contained an invisible pause, exactly 9 seconds of blank data inserted between frames. As though the machines themselves had been forced to breathe in sync with the thing they were studying. There was no evidence of Leviathan's existence. No body. No structure. No trace that could be held, dissected, or measured. But there was also no proof of absence. The ocean, in its infinite capacity for concealment, offered neither confirmation nor denial, only the silence of vast intelligence, the weight of an ancient presence that does not care to be witnessed. And sometimes, in the deep hours of northern night, the ice still murmurs. The sound travels through metal hulls, through the air, through sleep a pulse felt more than heard. 9 beats. 27 seconds of stillness, then nothing. Perhaps it is only memory, echoing through pressure and time. Or perhaps the world itself has a heartbeat, and for a moment, humanity simply learned to listen. No one ever found Leviathan, but no one ever proved he wasn't there. We upload new videos every single day, so make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss what's next. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like, it really helps the channel grow. Tell us in the comments what you'd like to see next, your ideas might be in our next upload. Thank you so much for watching and for being part of our community. Stay tuned, Stay curious, and we'll see you in the next video.